What if the wrong address led to the right life? He didn't know it yet, but on a rain-drenched night in the middle of nowhere, Daniel Harper was about to stumble not just into shelter, but into something that had been quietly waiting for him all along. If you believe in second chances and want to know what happens next, so subscribe for incredible stories of redemptions and second chance. So now jump back on story. The storm outside was relentless. Windshield wipers fought uselessly against the sheets of rain. The world beyond his truck's headlights reduced to liquid shadow and flickering shapes. The road beneath them curved endlessly through the misty Vermont hills, an ink-streaked ribbon unraveling into the dark. 10-year-old Lena sat huddled beside him, her hoodie pulled up over her damp curls, her cough rasping through the silence. It was the kind of cough that clung, persistent, worrisome. "Almost there, kiddo," Daniel said, though his voice cracked beneath the weight of that fragile promise. Almost where? He didn't know anymore. The GPS had long since frozen. The directions they trusted vanished behind them like smoke in trees. The truck wheezed now and then, stuttering like it too had lost faith. Somewhere behind them was a life they'd left in ruins, one filled with unpaid bills, hospital rooms, and the empty space left behind when Emily, Daniel's wife and Lena's mother, had died the previous winter. Grief had flattened their lives like an avalanche, and now all he had was this aching hope that somewhere up ahead there was a place they could begin again. A flicker in the headlights, a wrought iron gate materialized, half hidden by the storm. A plaque, aged and elegant, Remington Estate. Daniel's brow furrowed. This wasn't the modest fixer-upper he'd been chasing. But then Lena coughed again, harsher, thinner, and that was enough. He turned into the drive. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, the mansion looming at the top of the hill like something pulled from an old painting, massive and weary with time. Ivy curled around its stone bones, windows tall and black-eyed. The place looked as though it remembered everything, even if the world had long forgotten it. Daniel parked under the overhang, pulled his jacket tighter, and stepped into the torrent. He opened Lena's door gently. Her lips were dry, her face too pale. "Just a minute, okay? I'll check if someone's home." She nodded, trusting him even now. The front steps groaned under his feet. He rang the bell, knuckles trembling more from nerves than cold. For a moment, nothing. Then the soft sound of footsteps, the creak of the door, and there she stood. A woman, early 30s, dressed simply, her auburn hair loosely knotted. Her sweater was gray, her jeans dark, but it was her eyes that struck him. Sharp, wary, and exhausted in a way that couldn't be measured in hours. Yes, her voice was low, steady, but not unkind. I'm sorry to bother you," Daniel said quickly, brushing rain from his sleeves. "I'm Daniel Harper. My daughter and we got lost. She has asthma, and it's getting worse. I was hoping we could sit inside, just until the storm eases." Her gaze flicked past him, settling on the shadow of the girl in the truck. Her jaw worked, undecided. "This is private property. I understand. We'll leave as soon as the storm lets up. I just need a warm place for her. She's not doing well." A pause. Then, reluctantly, she nodded. "There's an old guest room. Cold, dusty, but dry." Daniel exhaled, a weight sliding from his shoulders. "Thank you. Truly. I'm not doing this for you," she said plainly. "I'm doing it for her." They reached the truck together. When she opened the door and saw Lena's flushed cheeks and labored breathing, something shifted in her expression. It wasn't pity. It was deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Or memory. She needs a doctor. She has one. The weather's just making it worse. Together, they carried Lena inside. The guest room was faded with time, smelling faintly of lavender and closed windows. But the sheets were clean. The radiator wheezed to life like an old man waking from a nap. Lena didn't fight. She curled beneath the blankets and slipped into sleep, shallow but steady. Downstairs, Daniel stood in the kitchen as the woman filled a kettle. The house smelled of forgotten wealth, cedar and dust, stone and age. Light flickered through crystal chandeliers, illuminating portraits that stared down from velvet-shadowed walls. "I'm Sophia Remington," she said flatly. "This was my father's house. He passed away last year. I'm sorry, Daniel murmured. She offered a brittle smile. Most people say that. I'm not sure it fits. They sat, silence tightening the air between them. Eventually, Sophia asked, "You said you were headed to Westridge?" Daniel nodded. Friend of a friend told me there was a place for sale, just outside town. I thought it might be a good place to start over. Start over from what? He hesitated. Then loss. Debt. The kind of noise that makes it hard to breathe. She studied him then, something thoughtful in her eyes. Without speaking, she walked to a drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Yellowed, edges curled. A map, hand-drawn in delicate ink. She placed it on the table. I saw your notepad in your jacket. Some of your markings. They're nearly identical. Daniel blinked. He reached into his coat and laid down his notebook. The resemblance was uncanny. What is this? My father gave it to me before he died. No explanation. No letter. Just said, "You'll know what it means when it matters." And what does it lead to? I don't know, she whispered. I gave up trying months ago, but then you knocked. That night, as the storm howled through the trees, something deeper stirred within the old house, something that had been still for too long. Morning came on tiptoe. Light slipped through the tall windows like a whispered apology. The world outside shimmered, washed clean. Inside, the house sighed and creaked, settling bones, perhaps. Daniel sat beside Lena, his body stiff from the chair, but his soul a little lighter. Her breathing had softened. Her color had returned. For the first time in months, something that resembled hope flickered within him. Sophia knocked gently and opened the door. I made coffee. She's better, he said. I noticed. A beat. She talks in her sleep. Daniel smiled. She talks all the time. Sleeping's just when I get to catch up. That earned the barest curve at the corner of her mouth. They moved to the kitchen. The aroma of coffee mingled with wood, history, and something ghostly floral, like lavender from a room that had forgotten why it bloomed. Sophia unfolded the map again. Her fingers traced it with reverence, as if afraid it would dissolve. He gave me this 2 days before he died. No instructions. Just handed it over. Daniel examined the symbols, cryptic, almost poetic. A tree circled. A chapel. A broken bridge. My father didn't do emotion. He did control, legacy, logic. So this. She shook her head. It doesn't fit. But you kept it. Almost threw it away. More than once. But something stopped me. Daniel matched one of the symbols to a turnoff he'd taken just yesterday. Miller's Crossing. Not a coincidence. How'd you draw that? She asked. I didn't. Some guy in Bartonville gave me a detour after a rock slide. Sophia's breath caught. Older man? Glasses? Gray hair? Beat-up Buick. He nodded. That was Henry's car. My father's. It was sold after he died. They stared at each other. Then someone's playing a very strange game, Daniel murmured. Sophia's fingers tightened on the paper. You and Lena, you can stay. The guest house out back. It's better for her breathing. Has windows. Daniel hesitated. I don't want to intrude. You didn't ask for anything, she replied. That's rare. They stood in silence, the house watching them. It felt like something was about to wake. That afternoon, father and daughter wandered the woods behind the estate. The air was sweet with pine and wet bark. Lena sipped warm tea, her eyes bright despite the weariness in her limbs. She let us stay, she asked. She did. Is she nice? Daniel smiled. I think she's trying. Lena crouched beside a mossy log, watching a snail drag its silver trail across a leaf. She's sad, she said suddenly. Daniel blinked. Why do you think that? She watches people like she forgot how to talk to them. But she opened the door, so maybe she wants to remember. That observation pierced Daniel in a way nothing else had. As they returned to the house, Sophia was standing behind the glass door, watching them, not hiding. That night, she sat alone in her father's study, the fire casting shadows that danced like memories. The map rested in her lap, and the walls around her seemed to breathe. For the first time in a long time, she wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, something lost might still be found, and maybe the wrong door had always been the right one. She slipped quietly into the house, leaving behind a rustle of leaves and filtered sunlight beneath the old oak. When she returned, her arms cradled a worn bundle, a thick stack of papers folded with care, a second map traced over in red pencil, and a scattering of time-worn photographs. She laid them gently on the picnic table, as if placing down pieces of a life she hadn't yet decided to claim. Daniel followed her wordlessly, settling into the seat across from her, the wood groaning under his weight. "I've been staring at these for over a year," Sophia murmured, her eyes fixed on the paper, but her thoughts clearly elsewhere. "The map, the deeds, old donation receipts, and this photograph. That's my father, standing outside a small building in Westridge. There's a boy next to him. I don't recognize him. I don't even know what that building was. I tried looking it up. It's not there anymore." Her voice trailed off into the rustling leaves. "I don't know what he wanted me to see, or if it even matters." Daniel stayed quiet, his fingers brushing the edge of the photograph. The boy was about 10, all knees and elbows, flashing a crooked, gap-toothed grin, awkward, yet joyful. But it was his eyes that held Daniel's gaze. They weren't just cheerful. They were brimming with something deeper. Gratitude. "I think that building used to be the Miller's Crossing Community Center," Daniel said softly. Sophia blinked, surprised. "How do you know that?" "I lived near here when I was a kid," he said, his voice dipping into memory. "Before we moved to the city, my mom used to take me there sometimes. They had free tutoring and peanut butter sandwiches on Tuesdays." Sophia was silent, taking that in. Then, with a shift in her tone, stronger, more deliberate, she leaned in. "Here's my offer. Help me figure out what my father was doing with this map, these places, these people. In return, you and Lena can stay here, as long as you need." Daniel tensed, the offer too close to charity for his comfort. "That's generous, but I don't want a handout." "It's not," she said firmly, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "It's a job, a partnership, if that makes it easier. I need someone who doesn't see the world the way I do. Someone not trapped in the same frame I've lived in my whole life. You're outside that. That's what I need." He looked back at the photo, then across the yard to where Lena lay sprawled in the grass, pointing at clouds and naming them like they were ancient constellations only she could see. "This would just be for a few weeks," he said finally. "Agreed. And no," she added, rolling her eyes, "your faces won't end up in some glossy foundation brochure. I hate those." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Then you've got yourself a deal." They shook hands across the table. No cinematic music, no moment of thunderous clarity, just a small, quiet shift in the air, like two long-stuck tectonic plates easing into place. Something old and unmoving had yielded. That afternoon, Daniel repaired a rusted barn hinge, while Sophia brought out 2 folding chairs and a cardboard box labeled Dad's off-grid notes. Lena sat between them, coloring with fierce concentration, occasionally looking up to ask, "Did Mr. Remington ever go to space?" Or, "Why did people write letters when they had email?" "He never left the atmosphere," Sophia said dryly. Daniel replied without missing a beat, "Because typed words don't smell like old paper and honesty." Lena wrote both answers beside her drawing of the house, where she'd sketched a version of Sophia with the speech bubble. "He never left the atmosphere, but his kindness did." Sophia stared at the child's drawing for a long moment, longer than she probably intended, before quietly returning her eyes to the map. Daniel, watching from the corner of his eye, noticed the subtle way her fingers slowed on the page, the way her shoulders, usually held so tightly, dropped, just a little. He saw a woman unraveling, not falling apart, but unfolding, like old parchment, tucked away in shadow for years, now basking again in the soft light of afternoon. And he understood. He knew that feeling. That evening, as twilight bathed the fields in liquid gold, Sophia returned to her father's study. Dust floated like memory in the golden haze as she pulled a leather-bound ledger from the shelf. Inside were numbers, donations made under pseudonyms, anonymous transfers, payments never publicly acknowledged. But they were real, traceable, and every single one sang the same quiet hymn. Help quietly, restore without fanfare, give without asking anything in return. You were never just a man in the headlines, she whispered, the truth echoing in the cavernous quiet. Outside, Lena's laughter spilled through the open window like music. And for the first time in years, Sophia didn't feel like a sentinel guarding a mausoleum. She felt like a traveler at the edge of a map she hadn't known belonged to her. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't meant to walk it alone. The old Remington truck, once used to haul crates of pharmaceuticals, now carried more humble cargo. A wooden crate of tools, a lunch packed by Lena, and the mysterious map, marked now in two distinct handwritings, one sharp and precise, the other curved and deliberate. They drove in silence, flanked by trees just beginning to burn with the early blush of autumn. It had been 3 days since the deal. 3 days of poring over ledgers and deeds. 3 days of quiet trust blooming like moss between two strangers who were, perhaps, not strangers anymore. Their first stop, a rusted sign just outside Miller's Crossing, closed until further notice. A chain-link fence hugged the remains of a red brick building now surrendered to weeds and time. Sophia stepped out first, her boots crunching on gravel. She looked at the structure with a mix of awe and anger, like an heir meeting a long-lost part of their inheritance they didn't know to expect. This was the community center, Daniel said. They gave out warm meals, tutoring, blankets in winter. My mom brought me here. First place I read a book start to finish. Sophia glanced at him. Which book? Where the red fern grows. Didn't admit I cried until I was 30. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. They circled to the back, where the fence had buckled. Inside, dust floated through fractured beams of sunlight. Torn posters clung to the walls. Literacy night Wednesdays. Family meal Fridays. A rusted filing cabinet tilted in the corner. Daniel forced it open. Inside was a photo. Her father, a decade younger, smiling beside a young boy with a cast on his arm, reading aloud from a book. That's not you, Sophia asked. No, but it could have been. Scrawled on the back in faint pen, don't just fun places. Go sit in them. They continued on, arriving next a narrow bookstore wedged between a bakery and a barber shop in Westridge. The bell above the door chimed, and the scent of old pages and binding glue wrapped around them like memory. An elderly man squinted at them from behind the counter. Mr. Tom, Sophia asked gently, did you know my father, Henry Remington? The name seemed to settle over the man like a snowfall. Haven't heard that name in years, he said, sitting up straighter. We found records, anonymous donations. You were one of them. He nodded slowly. He saved this place twice. First, when the developers tried to turn the whole block into condos. Second, after I broke my hip. Came in one morning, bills were paid. No note. Just done. He pointed to a wall of shelves. That whole section, children's and YA. He said if kids don't find stories early, they'll spend their lives chasing ones that don't exist. Sophia ran her fingers across the spines. A wrinkle in time. Hatchet. The giver. Daniel joined her. I borrowed Hatchet from my school library so often. The librarian just told me to keep it. I hated books, Sophia whispered. Too slow. Too vague. My father said I'd only fall in love with stock portfolios. Daniel met her eyes. He was wrong. They sat outside on a bench as Lena finished a cookie gifted by Mr. Tom. Sophia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. I always thought he wanted me to become him, ruthless, logical. But he never said it. Maybe he didn't know how. Some people love the way they were taught, Daniel said. Sometimes the words don't match the actions. Sometimes the map doesn't come with a legend. Sophia looked at him, her face unreadable, then softened. You're more poetic than you let on. He grinned. I've had to explain a lot of hard things in simple ways. Lena doesn't do metaphors. I'd do too. Lena piped up. Like that time I said the hospital smelled like old pennies and broken promises. Daniel winced. Okay, fine. She does metaphors. Occasionally. Terrifyingly well. Sophia laughed. Not politely. Not cautiously. But fully. Like a dam breaking inside her chest. That evening, as the truck ambled home beneath a rose-tinted sky, Sophia stared out the window. He wasn't building an empire, she said quietly. Daniel glanced at her. No, he agreed. He was building bridges. And maybe, she whispered, he left one for me. In the attic, the air smelled of pine and dust and the kind of secrets that whisper to you when you think you're alone. Sophia stood in the quiet, flashlight in hand, surrounded by old insulation and shadows. She hadn't come up here since the funeral, maybe longer. Daniel held the ladder steady below. You sure you want to do this now? No, she said honestly. Still, she stepped forward. Behind a stack of yellowing reports, she found a box marked personal, SR in her father's script. She knelt, fingertips trembling, and lifted the lid. Inside, tied with a faded red ribbon, were letters, dozens of them. Some addressed to strangers, others to names she barely remembered. Her childhood piano teacher, a former driver, a recipient of one anonymous donation. But one envelope was different. No stamp, no return address, just her name, Sophia. She stared at it, as though it might vanish if she blinked. I found one, she whispered. Daniel, halfway up the ladder now, didn't ask what it said. He didn't need to. But that wasn't all I ever was, and it's not all I ever hoped you would be. I handed you the company not because I thought you needed power, but because I didn't know any other way to give you trust. I judged your choices not because I didn't believe in you, but because I feared the world would be harsher than I ever dared to be. Still, I never meant for you to lose the kindness in your core. Your softness was never a weakness to me, only a light I didn't know how to protect. If you're reading this, I hope you found someone who awakens the part of you that doesn't calculate life in terms of returns, the part that still remembers the feel of earth under your fingers, the sound of a child's laughter echoing through an open field, the stillness that comes only when someone truly sees you. Not your title, not your projections, just you. I'm sorry I couldn't say these things while I was still alive. I was afraid you'd never believe them if they came from the man you thought I was. With love, Dad. Sophia's throat constricted. Her vision blurred as tears gathered, and she pressed the letter to her chest, her breath trembling, as if this fragile sheet of paper held her father's ghost. All the years spent steeped in quiet resentment, of feeling like a well-dressed pawn in his strategic portfolio, suddenly shattered, beneath the ledger lines and cool critique. He had loved her. He just hadn't known the dialect of tenderness she understood. She curled herself around the letter as if it were a lifeline cast into open water, anchoring her in the truth she'd yearned for but never dared believe. When she eventually descended the attic ladder, Daniel didn't ask questions. He simply pulled a chair out in the hallway and sat beside her on the hardwood floor, knees drawn, elbows on thighs, grounded in patient silence. After a while, her voice cracked into the stillness. I spent years thinking he didn't believe in me, that he only saw me as a number on his balance sheet. Daniel looked at her, gentle. And now, she paused, her gaze unfocused, but her soul raw. I think he saw me too clearly, and he was afraid the world would ruin what he saw. So he tried to shape me into someone the world couldn't break. She let out a bitter laugh, which, of course, ruined it anyway. Daniel gave a slow nod. We don't get to choose the language our parents use to teach us love. We only get to choose what we do with the pieces they leave behind. Sophia looked at him, her eyes glinting. What did yours leave you? Daniel exhaled softly. Silence, he said after a moment, and a workbench in the garage. She blinked. That's it. He gave a wistful smile. Took me 20 years to realize they were the same thing. Sophia smiled back, quietly. From the living room, a voice rang out with playful irreverence. Are you guys going to cry all night, or can we bake cookies now? Daniel chuckled, calling out, A Apparently we're on a tight schedule. Later that night, with the scent of chocolate chip cookies weaving through the warm kitchen air, Sophia sat beneath the soft pendant light, rereading her father's letter for the 4th time. And yet, the words kept finding untouched corners within her. Places she hadn't realized were still aching. Lena sat perched on the counter beside the mixing bowl, casually swiping at the batter with her finger. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "my mom used to write me notes when I was sad, tuck them into my backpack." Sophia looked up. "Did they help?" Lena shrugged, licking her finger. "Sometimes. Mostly 'cause it meant someone remembered I existed." Sophia's breath hitched. Daniel, who was bent over the oven, looked up. "She still has them," he said, "in a shoebox labeled proof." Lena grinned. "Because sometimes you forget you matter, so you need proof." Sophia stared at her, eyes stinging again. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached for the small stack of her father's old letters. One by one, she began sorting them by name. Daniel glanced over. "What are you doing?" She looked up, calm and certain, giving other people their proof. The next morning, Sophia stood at the mailbox at the edge of the long gravel driveway, a manila envelope cradled in her hands. Inside were 5 letters, sealed, addressed, and ready to find their way to hearts her father had never managed to reach. Daniel approached, thermos in hand. "You sure about this?" Sophia smiled, not with certainty, but with peace. "No, but it feels right." They stood together in the golden hush of morning as the mail truck crested the hill. Sophia held out the envelope, but Daniel didn't take it. He simply looked at her and said, with unwavering simplicity, "You don't have to carry all this alone." And for the first time in her life, she believed it, not as a gesture or an offer, but as a truth, a whole, simple truth. She placed the envelope in the mailbox, closed the lid, and as the wind whispered through the trees, the leaves rustled like soft applause, and inside her, a long-locked door creaked open. The phone rang just after dawn. Sophia stirred in the stillness of the guest house, bathed in the pale blush of sunlight, slipping through the lace curtains Lena had insisted they hang, to make the place softer. Her bare feet touched the cool wooden floor, grounding her. The screen flashed, Wesley Heiress, board chairman. Her stomach knotted. She let it ring twice more before answering. "Wesley." "Sophia." His tone was sharp, businesslike. "We need you back." She straightened. "I told you I'm taking time." "Well, time's up. The Elcor acquisition is stalling, legal's in chaos, and investors are panicking. You're still CEO on record. They want your voice in the next call." Sophia closed her eyes. "When?" "Noon. Your home office is already being reactivated. A courier's en route." Click. The line went dead. She sat there, phone still buzzing in her palm, the dial tone giving way to a surge of old ghosts, boardrooms with sterile light, the perpetual ache of perfection, the exhaustion of never being allowed to falter. By the time Daniel arrived with Lena and a brown bag of cinnamon muffins, Sophia was already pacing the living room, hair pulled tight, thick binder sprawled open, notes scribbled in frantic margin scrawl. Lena skipped to the kitchen, singing a song about muffins and sunshine. Daniel lingered in the doorway. "I know that look," he said. Sophia didn't glance up. "What look?" "The one people get right before they walk back into a burning building." She stopped. "They called," he said softly. "Yes." Her voice was clipped. "I'm expected to clean up a mess they made and reassure everyone with my presence." "You're good at it," he said. "I am," she whispered, "but I hate it." The confession surprised even her. Daniel stepped closer, steady. "So what changed?" Sophia looked toward the kitchen, where Lena danced barefoot on the tiles, then back at Daniel. "You did." He waited. "This house, these letters, my father's ghost hiding in every drawer. I thought solving the puzzle would give me closure. But what I found instead was a version of me I'd forgotten how to be." Daniel met her gaze. "Then don't walk away from her." Sophia gave a shaky laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not. Choosing another path is terrifying. especially when the world keeps handing you a crown and saying, "Put it back on." He paused. "But maybe you don't have to burn your old life down. Maybe you just stop letting it own all of you." At noon, Sophia sat in the sunroom, laptop open, her father's old map pinned behind her, a quiet reminder visible only to her. Faces lined the video call, rigid with tension. "Ms. Remington," Wesley began, "thank you for joining. Your absence has been recorded as compassionate leave, but we need confirmation that you're re-engaging." Sophia's voice was calm. "Define re-engaging." He blinked. "Excuse me. You want my name, my authority, my image, to hold your narrative steady. But do you want me?" A murmur. "I'll offer a compromise," she said. "I'll approve the Elcor merger on 2 conditions. First, a 10% increase in community reinvestment from post-acquisition profits. Second, full transparency on executive severance packages, publicly disclosed." Wesley stiffened. "That's highly irregular." "But legal," she replied, "and ethical. If we're going to call ourselves visionary, we ought to act like it." Silence. Then quiet nods. Wesley narrowed his eyes. "Very well." Sophia smiled faintly. "Then that will be my final contribution." A beat. "You're resigning?" "I'm rebalancing." And with that, she ended the call. The air outside was cool and gilded with afternoon light. Sophia stepped onto the porch, phone still in hand, fingers trembling. Daniel joined her. "How'd it go?" She exhaled. "I think I just bought back a piece of my soul." He grinned. "Did they cry?" "No, but they blinked. A lot." She paused. "You ever feel like you've been living someone else's life, and suddenly remember who you are?" "All the time," Daniel replied. "Usually right before I burn a frozen pizza, and Lena reminds me I used to fix engines blindfolded." Sophia laughed freely fully. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't finished. But it was real. That night, they built a fire in the backyard. Lena roasted marshmallows and told ghost stories about haunted teapots and vengeful tax forms. Daniel watched Sophia move in the firelight, not as the woman the world demanded she be, but as someone rediscovering her skin, her rhythm, her right to simply exist. "I didn't fix the company," she whispered. Daniel leaned in, touching her chest gently. "You fixed something better." She looked at him, the person who thought she had to carry it all alone. Her eyes shimmered. No boardroom, no spotlight, just smoke, stars, and a man who saw her not as a CEO or an enigma, but as someone, plain and beautiful, worth staying for. And in that stillness, Sophia finally believed it. That night, Daniel lay awake on the old couch, staring at the cracked ceiling as the fan spun above him in lazy circles. Lena's breathing came steady from the bedroom, but his mind was stormlit. He'd heard everything Sophia said earlier, heard the tremble in her voice, the ache in her bravery. They were meant to stay. This place was meant to be a pause, a breath, a detour, not roots. And yet, he looked out the window. A light still glowed in the main house. Sophia's silhouette moved behind the curtain, restless, pacing. Maybe she couldn't sleep either. He looked at his hands, calloused, rough from years of patching broken things. He had no right to stay at her world. But maybe what he believed had kept him smaller than he needed to be. And maybe, just maybe, this time, the risk of staying was worth more than the safety of leaving. The night was quiet, save for the whisper of wind outside the guest house windows. Daniel moved gently through the hallway, his footsteps barely creaking on the old wooden floor. He stepped into Lena's room and knelt beside her bed, watching her small chest rise and fall beneath the blanket. "Hey, Bug," he murmured softly. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, still foggy with dreams. "Daddy?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Is it morning?" "Not yet," he said, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. "I just needed to ask you something." Lena blinked slowly, the shadows of sleep still clinging to her lashes. "Are we in trouble?" Daniel smiled faintly, pain hiding just behind it. "No, sweetheart. Nothing like that." She was quiet for a long moment, then asked in a small voice, "Would Sophia be sad if we left?" His heart stuttered. He swallowed the lump rising in his throat. Maybe, he admitted honestly. Lena nodded, her gaze drifting to the ceiling as if weighing invisible scales in her head. Then I'd be sad too. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, overcome by the weight of her innocence. Do you like it here? He asked gently. I like how the wind sounds in the trees, she said, barely above a whisper. I like the way the wood in the guest house smells. And I like how you laugh more now. He felt his throat tighten. I do laugh more. She nodded drowsily, already slipping toward dreams again. You didn't used to. Not since Mommy. His breath caught in his chest. He kissed her forehead tenderly, then slowly stood. As he turned to leave, her small hand reached for his. Don't make your decision because you're scared, Daddy, she said, eyes half closed. Make it because you're kind. He stared at her, stunned by the quiet wisdom in her words. Where did you learn that? Lena smiled faintly. From you. Morning broke with a pale gold sky, and Daniel found Sophia sitting on the back patio, wrapped in a wool sweater, 2 steaming mugs of coffee on the table beside her. A clipboard rested on her lap, cluttered with pages of notes. She looked up as he approached, her eyes unreadable, yet quietly expectant. I need to talk to you, Daniel said, standing beside her. She gestured to the chair across from her. I figured. He sat down slowly. The silence between them was full, not tense, but heavy with things unsaid. I've been thinking, Daniel began, his voice careful, that maybe it's time for us to move on. Sophia's lips parted just slightly. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened. I don't want Lena to grow up feeling like we're guests where we were never truly invited to stay, he said, his hands clenched lightly. This place, it's yours, Sophia. Your father built it. You're rebuilding it. We were just passing through. Sophia's voice was low. Are you sure that's all this was? He hesitated, heart twisting. Then no, I'm not. She looked away, her jaw tight, emotion flickering in her eyes. I've spent so much of my life surviving, Daniel said, doing what I had to do. And I've done a decent job keeping Lena safe. But lately I've been wondering if playing it safe is keeping us from growing, keeping us small. Sophia's eyes shimmered with the beginnings of unshed tears. Then stay. Daniel looked at her, vulnerability etched in every line of his face. But what if I mess it up? What if I drag this place down, make things harder for you? You already make things easier, she whispered, voice trembling. Not by fixing things, just by being here, being you. He exhaled, the breath shaky and long, as if something deep within him had finally been released. Sophia reached for the clipboard, tore off the top page, and handed him the blank sheet beneath. What are you doing? He asked. Starting over, she said. No roles, no assumptions. Just a blank page. If you stay, we build something new. Together. Something that belongs to all of us. Daniel stared at the paper, then took the pen she offered. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote 3 words. The map room. Sophia read them and smiled. That's the name. He nodded. It's not about a house or a legacy. Not your father's past or mine. It's about creating a place where people find direction again. She looked at him, tears brimming. Like we did. He met her gaze. Exactly like we did. That afternoon, they walked together to the old barn, where Henry's tools still hung on the wall like memories. Daniel opened dusty cabinets, assessing what could be saved. Sophia cleared a space in the corner and rolled back the heavy barn door, letting sunlight flood in. From the orchard, Lena came sprinting, breathless and beaming, a hand-drawn map fluttering in her grasp. What's this? Sophia asked. It's a map of here, Lena said proudly. But instead of roads and places, it shows people. She pointed to each figure. This is Daniel, he's the builder. You're the dreamer. And I'm the explorer. Sophia knelt beside her, eyes shining. And where does it lead? Lena traced her finger to the center of the page. Here, she said, to the place where kindness lives. Daniel and Sophia exchanged a look, eyes soft, hearts opened. It wasn't love confessed, but something deeper. Love discovered. Not a vow for forever, but a choice for today. And sometimes that's how the real maps begin. A month passed. The barn no longer smelled of dust and disuse. Now it carried the scent of fresh pine, lemon oil, and hope. The wide doors opened to reveal shelves filled with donated books, hand-carved benches, a reading nook stitched together by the town quilting circle, and a little coffee corner stocked by the local bakery. Above the entrance, a sign read simply, "The Map Room, a place to pause, remember, and begin again." Sophia stood near the back, clipboard in hand, watching Daniel adjust the final screw on the sign. Her heels had long been replaced by sneakers, her tailored blouse traded for a cardigan. And something else had changed too. The guarded look she once wore was gone, replaced by warmth. "You hung it straight," she said. Daniel gave her a look. "I always hang it straight." She laughed, tucking the clipboard under her arm. "The mayor's coming at noon. Channel 7's doing a piece on community renewal projects." "You sure about that?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "Thought your dad was all about staying out of the spotlight." "This isn't about attention," she said, looking around. "It's about access. It's about letting people know they have somewhere to go when they've forgotten where they're headed." She paused, eyes resting on him. "And I think he'd understand. This isn't his anymore. It's ours." Daniel nodded, checking a loose window latch. Lena already recruited 3 kids to the Explorer team. They're mapping every trail behind the orchard. She named one the Worry Path. Said it winds too much and takes too long, but it ends in a field of wildflowers. He chuckled. "She's 10 going on 60. Sophia leaned against the post beside him. "You know, I thought I'd spend my life climbing higher, reaching further. That was always the plan." She looked around the room. "But maybe the most important thing I'll ever build is a place where people feel safe enough to stop." Daniel studied her. "Funny, isn't it? The more we let go, the more we hold on to what actually matters." Sophia smiled softly. "You've gotten philosophical lately." "Just well rested," he said, for the first time in 5 years. They laughed, low and warm. A laughter that didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be real. By noon, the map room was humming with gentle energy. Farmers with calloused hands drifted in, young parents with toddlers, an elderly couple who had once lost a grandson, but now found joy tutoring children. The mayor gave a short speech. Reporters asked questions, but Sophia's answers stayed rooted in the community. Daniel, ever in the background, quietly fixed a book cart with a boy who had a learning delay. Sophia watched him from across the room. For the first time, she didn't see a man who had stumbled into her life. She saw the man who stayed. Every single day. Lena ran over, waving a piece of folded paper. "It's ready." Sophia knelt. "What is it?" "The first official map of the map room," Lena said. "I made it for people who feel lost." Sophia opened it. There were cartoonish drawings, T-station, reading corner, a hug zone. Daniel swore wasn't real but was frequently used. In the center, a circle glowed with soft golden crayon. "What's this?" Sophia asked. "That's the quiet heart," Lena said. "It's where people go when they don't know what to say." Sophia blinked, touched. "That's beautiful." Lena shrugged. "Everyone needs a place to be silent. That's where things start to heal." That evening, after the last guest had gone, Daniel and Sophia sat on the porch steps, watching the sky melt into dusk. "Do you ever wonder how we got here?" she asked. "Every day," Daniel said. "Not just the place," she whispered. "The people we became. You with your toolbox. Me with my clipboard and too many shoes. You haven't worn heels in weeks." "I don't miss them." "Good," he said. A silence fell between them, deep and easy. Then Daniel turned, voice low. "I think your father would be proud." Sophia looked toward the barn, its golden light spilling onto the grass. "Maybe. But now, I'm more focused on whether I'm proud of me." Daniel reached for her hand. No grand gesture, just a quiet, certain touch. "You're not scared?" she asked. "Terrified," he said. But I'm staying. She smiled. Always. He nodded. Always. That night, Sophia sat at her father's old desk. A candle flickered beside her. She unfolded the map he had drawn long ago, her fingers tracing the lines, the places, the lessons. It had never truly been about direction. It had always been about values, kindness, presence, belonging. She picked up a pen and drew a new circle. Right over the land where the barn stood. She labeled it simply. Found. Then leaned back, eyes soft, whispering, "Thank you, Dad. I finally got it." The curtain stirred, the wind offering its gentle reply. And Sophia, at last, felt completely home. The first snow arrived like a blessing, quiet, sacred. The orchard lay blanketed in white, and the map room breathed warmth from within. Daniel stoked the fire, cheeks pink from the cold. In his arms, firewood and a bag of cinnamon scones, Lena's Friday request. The room pulsed with life. Children on bean bags, teenager painting, an older man sipping tea in silence at the quiet heart. Sophia stood watching, all blooming in her chest. This wasn't someone else's dream. It was theirs. Alive. Healing. Whole. They came back with cheeks flushed and feet caked in mud, laughter still clinging to their breath. "This one's called the Almost Brave Trail," Lena declared with the pride of a young cartographer who'd just named a newly discovered land. "It's short, but there's this huge branch you have to duck under. Makes it feel like an adventure." Sophia quirked a brow. "You've renamed that same path 3 times this month." Lena didn't flinch. "Paths change depending on how you feel," she said, matter-of-factly. "Didn't you teach me that?" Sophia opened her mouth, the instinct to correct rising, then paused, closed it, nodded instead. "Can't argue with that." Daniel ruffled Lena's hair as she darted past. "Hey, explorer." She beamed. "You should come next time. We're hunting for kindness rocks." "Kindness what?" "They're rocks that people paint with nice words, then hide in the woods. When you find one, you can keep it or rehide it. Like emotional treasure hunting." Daniel let out a soft chuckle. "Sounds like the best kind of treasure." "Exactly," she grinned, then bounded off again, disappearing beneath a pine tree, where she twirled once before slipping back into the map room like a memory. Sophia watched her daughter vanish, the last golden streaks of sun catching in her hair. "She's happier here than I've ever seen her." Daniel turned to her, quiet warmth behind his eyes. "She's not the only one." That evening, the 3 of them sat on the front porch of the guest house. Twinkling white lights framed the roofline, like constellations brought down to earth. A small wreath, twigs, and mismatched buttons, all knotted with care, hung gently on the door. In their hands, mugs of hot cider steamed in the brisk air, scenting it with cinnamon and home. The stars shimmered in a sky so sharp, so achingly clear, it looked as if it might crack open. Sophia leaned her head onto Daniel's shoulder, silence stretching between them like something sacred. "Do you ever think we stumbled into something meant for us?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Daniel paused, thought, then shook his head softly. "No, I think we chose it. Every day. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard." She looked up at him, her eyes glassy with emotion. "I almost ran so many times." "I know. Why didn't you?" Daniel turned toward her, his gaze steady. "Because I've spent most of my life holding back, scared I'd never be enough. Then I came here, and you let me be useful. Not flashy, not extraordinary, just needed. That's rare. I wasn't going to walk away from that." Tears pressed at the corners of her eyes. "Also," Daniel added with a small grin, "Lena said she'd ground me if I left." Laughter bubbled up between them, easing the heaviness. Then Sophia whispered, "I was so scared to let people in. I didn't realize the walls I built to keep others out were also keeping me in." Daniel kissed her temple, slow and reverent. "You're not inside those walls anymore." The next day, Judy, the silver-haired woman who read to the children every Thursday, approached Sophia by the hearth. In her hands, she held a small box wrapped in brown paper. "No return address," she said, handing it over. Sophia peeled back the wrapping with quiet curiosity. Inside lay a heavy brass compass, dulled by time, its edges worn smooth by fingers long since gone. Taped beneath was a note, for when you forget the way forward. Trust the things that don't move. Love, time, and the places that stay kind. No signature, but none was needed. Sophia turned the compass over, feeling the needle settle with a decisive grace, as if it had found true north, not on a map, but within her. Her breath caught. She pressed it to her chest, eyes shining. "Full circle," she whispered. Daniel stepped beside her, voice low. "What did it say?" She lifted the compass, gaze locking with his. It said, "We're not lost." That evening, as snow drifted down in gentle spirals and children painted kindness rocks near the fire, neighbors swapped recipes for stew and apple pie beneath rafters, once draped in silence. Sophia stood at the center of it all and felt the truth settle deep in her bones. Her father's map hadn't led her to a place. It had led her home. Not a house, not an inheritance, not even a legacy, but a life, built choice by choice, heart by heart. And now, she wasn't walking it alone. Not anymore. It was a quiet Sunday morning when Daniel uncovered the final clue. Not through effort, but through something older, something quieter. Curiosity. He had been sorting through an old cabinet in Henry Remington's study, planning to repurpose the space for the map room's first writing workshop. Sophia was off meeting a librarian about a mobile book cart. Lena, ever the adventurer, was mapping the Courage Trail, a winding path that she insisted only revealed itself when someone felt truly ready to walk it. Daniel expected ledgers, maybe forgotten pens. Instead, he found a thin wooden frame wrapped in parchment and twine. Beneath it, a sealed envelope with a single word, and his fingers trembled as he turned it over, reverence curling through his chest. Unwrapping it slowly, he revealed a hand-drawn map, ink on thick, textured paper. This one didn't chart faraway places. It focused inward, the orchard, the barn, the winding trails. At its center, the main house, circled in gold ink, but not labeled house. Labeled return. Daniel unfolded the note. "If you've made it here, then you've walked far enough to ask the right question. What was I building this whole time? I used maps to hide what I couldn't say. About regret, about longing, about the daughter I didn't know how to hold without pressing too hard. I taught the world to follow my mind, but I failed to teach my child to follow my heart. So I leave this last marker, not to guide you forward, but to bring you back, to remind you. Sometimes the most courageous path is the one home. Love always. Dad." Daniel sat back, the page trembling in his lap like a prayer. He knew this message, this offering, was not his to carry. It had to be hers. That evening, after dinner, Daniel led Sophia gently into the study. Lena trailed behind, quieter than usual, sensing the gravity of the moment. Without a word, Daniel handed her the frame and the letter. Sophia stared. As her eyes traced the familiar script, her shoulders began to shake, not from grief, but from recognition that comes when you realize someone did love you, more than you ever dared believe. Not in words, but in the quiet marks they left behind. She sank into the chair by the fireplace, still clutching the frame. Lena crawled into her lap, wrapping her arms around her mother. "He really did love you, didn't he?" she asked softly. Sophia nodded, voice catching. "He did, in his own way. And all this time, I thought I needed him to say it." Daniel knelt beside them. Turns out he showed it. Sophia looked again at the map, then picked up a pen. Beneath the golden word return, she added two more. Return. Stay. The next morning, Sophia walked alone to the barn. Snow clung to the trees like lace. The map room stood silent, almost reverent, like a chapel. She stepped inside, knelt in the quiet heart circle, and pressed her hand to the wood. "I forgive you," she whispered, and she meant it, not because it erased the ache of being unseen for so long, but because now she saw him, fully, clearly, tenderly, and maybe for the first time, she saw herself, not as someone burdened by legacy, but as a woman who had come home to her own heart. That weekend, Sophia and Daniel hosted the first founders gathering in the map room. Neighbors arrived with pies and folding chairs. Teenagers read poetry. An elderly woman shared how her late husband had once fixed a radio in that very barn, and now somehow she could still hear his laughter echoing in the beams. Midway through, Lena stood up. "I made a new map," she said, handing out copies. On each page a name, and a line, not leading to a place, but to a feeling. Kindness, hope, music, laughter, tea, listening. "I wanted to make a map where nobody gets lost," she said. "Only found." Silence. Then applause, not thunderous, but steady. Like rain on a roof. Like warmth in winter. Sophia hugged Lena tight, whispered something meant only for her. Daniel stood nearby, arms folded gently, just like Henry once had in an old photo. The room was whole. Not perfect, but complete. That night, with the map room quiet again, Sophia stood on the porch and looked up at the stars. Daniel stepped beside her. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe we don't have to name everything. Maybe we just live it." He slid his hand into hers. "But if we did name this moment, this feeling, what would we call it?" She smiled. "Arrival." He leaned in. "Then we're finally here." Snow fell again, soft as memory. In the hush between one breath and the next, Sophia closed her eyes and knew she wasn't following her father's map anymore. She was living her own, and she had arrived, exactly where she was meant to be.